American beach towns. White sand stretching for miles. Wooden boardwalks lined with ice cream shops. Pelicans gliding over turquoise water. Retirees walking barefoot at sunrise. It is the image that sells 1 million property listings every single year. And for many people, it is the dream. A quiet seaside town where life slows down, and the biggest decision of the day is whether to have lunch on the patio or the porch. But some of America's beach towns are hiding something far darker than high property taxes. We are talking about a resort that once hosted Frank Sinatra, now lined with dead fish and toxic dust so dangerous it triggers health alerts 100 miles away. A beach community of 1,000 buildings erased overnight by a single storm, leaving exactly one yellow house standing in a field of concrete slabs. Dome-shaped houses built by an eccentric inventor, slowly swallowed by the ocean over 30 years until hurricanes finished the job. A ghost in a gray overcoat who has been warning residents about incoming hurricanes for over 200 years. And a beach where you are statistically more likely to be bitten by a shark than you are to find a parking space on a Saturday morning. If you have ever considered a seaside retirement in America, you might want to hear this first. And please hit that subscribe button. Now, let us begin. Number 10. We start on the rugged Pacific coastline of Northern California, roughly 25 miles south of San Francisco, in a tiny unincorporated community called Moss Beach. The population is under 3,500. It is the kind of place people recommend as a quieter alternative to Santa Monica. But Moss Beach has a resident who has been here far longer than any of the living inhabitants. During Prohibition in the 1920s, a speakeasy operated on the cliff directly above the beach. That building is still standing today. It is now a restaurant called the Moss Beach Distillery. Back in those bootlegging years, a young married woman became a regular at the speakeasy. She was always dressed in blue. She came to see her lover, a musician who performed at the bar most evenings. The two of them would walk the narrow path down to the beach below the cliffs after his sets. One night, the woman was found murdered on that beach. Her lover had been brutally assaulted but survived. Her husband was never seen again after her death. No arrest was ever made. Since that night, staff and patrons at the distillery have reported things they cannot explain. Phone calls from disconnected lines, checkbooks floating off tables, cold spots that appear in specific corners of the restaurant and then vanish. A woman's silhouette standing on the cliffs at night, visible from the dining room windows. The beach below has produced reports of a woman crying, audible even above the crashing surf. She is known locally as the Blue Lady. The restaurant was featured on Ghost Hunters and Unsolved Mysteries. Decades of staff have come and gone. The reports have never stopped. A murdered woman haunting a seaside restaurant is unsettling enough. But what if an entire beach is haunted by men who were murdered to protect buried treasure? Number 9. On the Oregon coast, at the base of Neahkani Mountain in Tillamook County, sits the small beach town of Manzanita. The population is under 700, but the sand beneath your feet here holds a secret that dates back over 4 centuries. In the 1500s, a Spanish galleon wrecked near Manzanita Beach. The ship had been crossing the Pacific from Manila. Sailors who survived the wreck came ashore carrying a chest of gold. They intended to bury it on Neahkani Mountain. To ensure no one could ever reveal the location, the sailors murdered at least one man and buried the body alongside the treasure. Some accounts say they killed several. For centuries, chunks of beeswax marked with Spanish shipping symbols washed up along the shoreline. When scientists examined the wax, they found it contained wings from Philippine bees, confirming the cargo came from a Manila galleon. Local indigenous tribes had been exchanging recovered wax with fur traders all the way until the 1860s. Their oral histories described foreign sailors who lived among the native peoples after the wreck. In 2013, hull fragments were finally discovered in the sea caves along the coastline. This single archaeological find validated centuries of indigenous oral tradition. The shipwreck was real. The sailors were real. The murders were real. But the gold has never been found. Treasure hunters have been digging on Neocani Mountain for over 200 years. Not a single coin has been recovered. Residents and visitors report figures walking the beach in fog. Some say they are the spirits of the murdered men, still guarding what was buried with them. Ghosts of murdered sailors guarding buried treasure are the stuff of novels. But the next beach town's ghost does not haunt to frighten. It haunts to save your life. Number 8. Pawleys Island is a barrier island on the coast of South Carolina in Georgetown County. It is one of the oldest summer resorts on the American East Coast. Quiet, historic, and deeply tied to the Low Country's rice plantation era. But Pawleys Island is known for something no other beach town in America can claim. It has a ghost that predicts hurricanes. The legend dates to 1822. A young man was traveling from Charleston to visit his fiancée on Pawleys Island. Eager to arrive quickly, he took a shortcut through the salt marshes. His horse became trapped in pluff mud, a thick, quicksand-like marsh sediment common in the Low Country. Both rider and horse drowned. Weeks later, his fiancée reported seeing him standing on the beach, dressed entirely in gray. He stared at her in silence and then vanished. Days after the sighting, a catastrophic hurricane struck the island. Her home was the only one left standing. Since that day, the figure known as the Gray Man has been sighted before every major hurricane to hit the South Carolina coast. Jim and Clara Moore appeared on Unsolved Mysteries claiming they encountered the Gray Man just before Hurricane Hugo in 1989. They evacuated immediately. When they returned, their rental property was untouched. Hugo caused over $270 million in damage along the coast. Homes on either side of theirs were destroyed. The Weather Channel ran a special segment after Hugo, interviewing multiple residents who had seen the figure. More recent sightings were reported before Hurricane Florence in 2018 and Hurricane Ian in 2022. The consistent thread across 200 years of accounts is always the same. Those who see the Gray Man and heed his warning return to find their property unharmed, even when neighboring homes are flattened. A ghost that warns you to flee before a storm is eerie enough. But the next location involves a beach where you are more likely to be attacked by a shark than anywhere else on Earth. Number 7. New Smyrna sits on the east coast of Florida in Volusia County, roughly 50 miles northeast of Orlando. The population is approximately 28,000. It is a popular surf destination with warm, shallow water and a long stretch of sand. It also holds a title that no tourism board would ever put on a brochure. New Smyrna Beach has been officially designated the Shark Attack Area of the World by the International Shark Attack File, maintained by the University of Florida. This is not folklore. This is a scientific database. The town sits at the mouth of Ponce de Leon Inlet, where warm currents and rich fish populations create a natural convergence zone. Bull sharks, blacktip sharks, and spinner sharks patrol these waters constantly. Surfers and swimmers are packed into the same narrow stretch of shoreline, directly in the feeding zone. In 2018 alone, 16 shark attacks were recorded at this single beach. In the 5 preceding years, the average was 30 attacks per year. Florida's shark attacks around New Smyrna accounted for nearly 24% of all recorded shark attacks worldwide in 2018. That is roughly 1/4 of every shark attack on the entire planet. Local surfers have long treated bites as something closer to a rite of passage than a catastrophe. The attitude among longtime residents is not a question of whether you will be bitten, but when. A beach where shark attacks are a statistical certainty is disturbing. But the next destination involves houses that are not being attacked by sharks. They are being swallowed by the ocean itself. Number 6. At the southern tip of Marco Island in Collier County, Florida, in a remote area called the 10,000 Islands, Something extraordinary once stood on the beach. 6 dome-shaped concrete modules, raised on stilts, painted white, looking like something from a science fiction film. They were only accessible by water. There were no roads, no bridges, no neighbors, just the Gulf of Mexico and the mangroves. In 1980, a retired oil producer and amateur inventor named Bob Lee began building what he intended to be a completely self-sustaining vacation home. The concrete walls were made from sand sourced directly from the island. Solar panels provided electricity. Gutters collected rainwater, channeled it into a 23,000-gallon cistern, purified it, and pumped it through the house. Before building on Cape Romano, Lee constructed a full-scale model in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. That model is still standing today. Locals were suspicious of the futuristic structures from the start. Rumors spread that the domes were home to evil spirits. Others insisted they had been built by aliens. The truth was more mundane, but the fate of the house was stranger than any rumor. In 1992, Hurricane Andrew destroyed the interior. The Lee family abandoned the home. Over the following decades, the beach itself disappeared. Coastal erosion consumed the land beneath the stilts. By 2004, the concrete pillars were permanently underwater. The dome stood 300 feet offshore, surrounded on all sides by open water. John Tosto purchased the property for $300,000 in 2005. He invested $500,000 trying to save it. Collier County fined him $187,000 for failing to demolish it. Hurricane Irma collapsed 2 domes in 2017. Hurricane Ian destroyed the remaining 4 in 2022. Today, only the concrete pilings remain above the surface. Houses slowly consumed by the rising ocean is a haunting image. But what about an entire town that the ocean erased in a single night? Number 5. Gilchrist was a small beach community on the Bolivar Peninsula in Galveston County, Texas. Notice the past tense. The town sat at the narrowest point of the peninsula, bordered on one side by the Gulf of Mexico and on the other by Galveston Bay. Before the storm, roughly 1,000 permanent residents lived there. Gilchrist was known for Rollover Pass, one of the most popular fishing spots in the entire state. A quiet place, a seasonal place, a place where people went to fish and forget about the world. On September 13, 2008, Hurricane Ike made landfall. The storm surge reached 14 feet, and 20-foot battering waves crashed over the peninsula. Because Gilchrist sat at the narrowest point, the storm hit from both sides. After the initial surge from the Gulf, the counterclockwise winds pushed Galveston Bay's water back across the town from the opposite direction. Gilchrist was struck by 2 surges, front and back. NOAA aerial photography confirmed the scale of destruction. 99.5% of the approximately 1,000 buildings in Gilchrist were knocked off their foundations. Galveston County's emergency management spokesperson stated that Gilchrist had been wiped clean. Of all the houses on the Gulf-facing side, exactly 1 survived. A bright yellow house owned by Pam and Warren Adams, supported 14 feet off the ground by reinforced wooden columns, built to the latest hurricane building codes. The aerial photograph of that solitary yellow house, surrounded by empty concrete slabs, became one of the most iconic disaster images of 2008. Warren Adams returned to the site and said that the tears started to flow. There was a yellow house sitting there, but that was all. There were no lampposts remaining, no house foundations, no street signs, no streets at all, even though a GPS unit would insist the avenues were right there beneath your tires. The Gilchrist Volunteer Fire Department disbanded entirely and donated all their equipment to departments miles away. By 2011, Galveston County bought out 434 properties. The land was deemed too close to the post-storm shoreline for any future use. A town erased in a single night with only 1 house left standing is devastating. But what about a beach town that was erased not by 1 storm, but by decades of slow, relentless erosion? Number 4. On the New Jersey shore in Ocean County, there was once a lively beach community called Seabreeze. In its heyday, the town featured carousel rides, clam bakes, and a grand seaside hotel that locals rumored had operated as a Prohibition-era speakeasy. Summer visitors packed the streets, and the boardwalk culture was thriving. Then the ocean began to take it back, not in a single dramatic event, but slowly, over years and decades. Coastal erosion, storm after storm, and the devastation of Hurricane Gloria gradually consumed the town. Streets that once led to beachfront homes now terminate in marshland. Former roads end at exposed foundations. Overgrown stone stairways lead to nothing. The area has been partially converted into a wildlife refuge. Curbs remain. Drain covers sit in the ground where they were installed decades ago. Pathways run in straight lines between plots of empty marsh. The infrastructure of a town remains perfectly intact, but everything it was built to serve has been removed by the ocean. Walking those streets feels like walking through a town that has been erased from reality, but not from the map. A town where the streets exist, but the houses are gone, is deeply eerie. But the next location takes that concept to an unimaginable extreme. An entire port city, destroyed twice by hurricanes, now sitting under 4 feet of water. Number 3. On the shore of Matagorda Bay in Calhoun County on the Texas Gulf Coast, there is almost nothing to see. A flat, empty stretch of waterlogged land. A single historical plaque. A small cemetery with weathered headstones. That is all that remains above water of what was once the second largest port in the entire state of Texas. In the middle of the 1800s, Indianola was a thriving city of 5,000 people. It was a critical gateway for European immigrants, particularly German settlers who came in their thousands. It served as a major supply depot during the Civil War. Camels were imported through Indianola's docks as part of the United States Army's Experimental Camel Corps. This was a real, functioning city. Ships arrived daily. Families built homes and raised children. In 1875, a powerful Category 3 hurricane drove a massive storm surge directly into Matagorda Bay. 3/4 of the city's 2,000 buildings were destroyed in a single night. 176 people were killed. The survivors rebuilt. 11 years later, in 1886, a Category 4 hurricane swept almost the entire rebuilt city into the bay. 250 more people died. This time, the survivors did not rebuild. The town was abandoned entirely. Today, the ruins of Indianola lie under approximately 4 feet of water in Matagorda Bay. During low tide, you can see the outlines of foundations, cisterns, and remnants of streets just beneath the surface. 5,000 people lived here. Entire streets of homes and businesses thrived here. Now the fish swim through it. A city submerged beneath the waves it once commanded is haunting. But our next destination did not drown. It was poisoned. Number 2. On the eastern shore of the Salton Sea in Imperial County, California, 223 feet below sea level, sits the lowest populated community in all of North America. It is called Bombay Beach. The 2020 census recorded a population of 231. In 1990, the population was 991. That is a collapse of 77% in 30 years. To understand Bombay Beach, you first have to understand the Salton Sea. In 1905, the Colorado River flooded through a badly constructed irrigation canal and poured into the Salton Sink for 18 consecutive months. The result was California's largest inland body of water, 35 miles long, 15 miles wide. An accidental sea in the middle of the desert. By the 1950s and 60s, the Salton Sea had become one of the most glamorous resort destinations in Southern California. Frank Sinatra performed at the clubs along Bombay Beach. Bing Crosby visited regularly. The Beach Boys were seen on the shore. Jerry Lewis and the Marx Brothers came for the weekends. The North Shore Beach and Yacht Club opened in 1959 as the largest marina in Southern California. At its peak, the Salton Sea was drawing 1.5 million visitors per year. That is more than Yosemite National Park. Then the water began to die. Agricultural runoff from surrounding farms saturated the lake with salts, pesticides, and chemical fertilizers. The salinity rose above the level of the Pacific Ocean. Fish began dying in enormous numbers. A report by the Pacific Institute stated that roughly 100 million fish had been reduced by more than 97%. As the Salton Sea shrank, it exposed the lake bed. The dried sediment, contaminated with decades of pesticide runoff, became airborne dust. Toxic particulates spread through the air, in some cases reaching as far as Los Angeles. More than 650,000 people were affected. Imperial County declared a local state of emergency. Residents of Bombay Beach fled. They left houses standing with furniture still inside. Trailers were abandoned with belongings scattered on the floor. Today, the town is a grid of decaying homes, rusted trailers, and boarded windows. The shoreline is not sand. It is a crust of dead fish bones that crunch beneath your feet with every step. The nearest petrol station is 20 miles away in Neeland. The closest hospital is over 45 minutes away in Brawley. In 2016, a group of artists launched the Bombay Beach Biennale, transforming abandoned structures into art installations. The first theme they chose was the art of decay. Wrecked cars are lined up facing a blank white truck trailer like a post-apocalyptic drive-in cinema. A sign on the beach reads, "The only other thing is nothing." A resort that once hosted Frank Sinatra, now lined with dead fish and toxic dust, is disturbing enough. But our final destination may be the most unsettling beach town in all of America, because this one has empty graves. Number 1. Off the coast of Georgia, among the chain of barrier islands known as the Golden Isles, lies Jekyll Island. It is accessible by a single causeway from the mainland in Glynn County. Today, it operates as a state-owned historic district and resort. But for decades, Jekyll Island was the most exclusive private club in the world. And the things that happened here still echo through the empty halls. In 1886, a consortium of America's wealthiest families purchased the entire island as a private winter retreat. The members of the Jekyll Island Club included the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Vanderbilts, and the Pulitzers. At one point, the combined wealth of the club's members represented 1/6 of all the money on Earth. Access to the island was strictly controlled. Uninvited visitors were turned away at gunpoint. The club operated its own security force, its own docks, its own supply chain. It was a sealed world of unimaginable wealth surrounded by ocean. In 1910, a group of financiers and politicians gathered in secret on Jekyll Island to draft what would become the Federal Reserve Act. The meeting was so confidential that participants used code names and traveled separately to avoid detection. The modern American financial system was born on this beach. Then came World War II. The families left. The island was too vulnerable to potential coastal attacks. The club closed. The millionaires never came back. The state of Georgia purchased the island in 1947, and what they inherited was a time capsule of Gilded Age opulence frozen in place. The Jekyll Island Club Hotel is today reported to be one of the most actively haunted hotels in the American South. General Lloyd Aspinwall helped found the club but died before it could open its doors. He is said to roam the property, spotted by guests and staff for over a century. Samuel Spencer, a regular guest who died in a railway collision in 1906, reportedly haunts his former room. Guests report finding their coffee disturbed and their newspapers rustled by invisible hands. A bellman dressed in a 1920s uniform has been spotted working the hallways across different decades. But the most disturbing element of Jekyll Island is the Dubignon Cemetery on the island grounds, containing the family graveyard of the original owners before the millionaires arrived. Visitors and paranormal investigators have reported floating orbs of light among the headstones. More unsettling still, multiple graves are rumored to be empty. The headstones are there, the plots are marked, but the bodies are unaccounted for. You can walk through the club's grand dining room today, the room where 1/6 of the world's wealth once gathered for supper. The walls are restored. The chandeliers hang as they did a century ago. The tables are set. The chairs are empty. And some say they do not stay empty for long. If you like this video, please subscribe. Make sure to watch the next video appearing on the screen.